Hey, this is Steve with Dabble Lab, and this is part 6 of a multi-part tutorial on building Alexa skills using Twilio Autopilot. We've been building a simple Alexa skill that provides some information about operating hours for our business and then also collects customer feedback. So lets customers, users rate the business. And what we're going to do in this part is look at using information that was collected by Autopilot and saving that information to a backend database. And up to this point, let me just walk through where we are real quickly, and then we'll pick up. So the skill that we're building is called, well, demo skill, creative name. And here's what it does right now.
Hello. You can ask me for our operating hours, or you can rate our service. Which would you like to do?
Say rate service.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate our service?
And we'll say a 9.
Would you recommend us to a friend?
And we'll say yes.
You rated us a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10 and said yes when asked if you would recommend us to a friend.
Okay, so right now we have a Twilio function that is generating that response, and we set that up in the last video, and it's a pretty simple function that is just using information that was collected by the assistant as saving it to a variable and then using that as part of the speech response that's coming back. So we're really not doing a whole lot here. We're just responding back, but now we're going to take this information and we're going to expand on this function here, and we're going to save what was collected to a backend database. And the database that we're going to use for the backend data storage is Airtable, or we're going to create a database in Airtable. If you're not familiar with Airtable, it's a really cool service that lets you create databases using just a web interface. It does a lot more than what we're going to be doing today. We're just going to create a simple database with a table to store our information. You can get an account at airtable.com, and I'll leave a link in the show notes also, and they have a free account that you can use. And so we're going to start here, and we're going to create a database from scratch, and we're going to call it ratings. And when you create a new base, there is a default table set up, table 1, and I'm going to just modify this table a little bit. I'm going to call it this first field ID rather than name, and I'm going to make it an auto number field. Where is that? We use that for our record identifier, and then I'm going to change this over here to rating. Rid of this rather than notes, and I'm going to just change this to a single line text field. And then let's see, we'll need a field called like would recommend. How do you spell that? We'll go with it. Okay, and maybe add one more column called date that will save the date that the recommendation, or that the rating rather, was collected. So we'll say date, and we'll add a time stamp here and make this GMT time. And okay, so this is the table that I'm going to use here. Something else that you need to do is, so we're going to need to use there's a client SDK for Node that is really great and simple to use. If you go to Airtable, oh my goodness, /API. This is really cool here. So when you go to airtable.com/API, you'll see your bases and tables there. And if you click on the base that you want to work with, in our case, the rating space, and then go to Node.js, because that's what we're using here. And there's just this one table, this table 1. So we'll click on that and probably rename that table to something. Yeah, let me do that. Rename this to ratings or something. and go back over here. Okay. And we are going to create a record in the table. So this gives you an example, but in our case, this example is almost exactly what we need. So I'm going to just copy all of this here and then go over to my Twilio function here and paste it in like this. Tab this in and take this here and move it inside here so the callback isn't called until the create record is finished. And in here, this API key, you're going to need an API key to make this work. And this is your Airtable API key. And you can get that if you go to Airtable and you go to your account here. And then if you click on this, it'll show your API key. And you want to copy that. And I've already set this up, but I'll show you where you want to set it up. So I'm going to save this for right now, and I'll come back in a second here and continue editing this. But if you go into configure, you can set environment variables in here. So right here, and I've already created one. I created one called Airtable API key, and then I just pasted the value that I copied my API key from over there in here. And you can create a new one by just clicking on this plus. You can call it whatever you want. I called it Airtable _ API key. And then the other thing is the NPM module, or the node module that we're going to use is this one called, where is it? Airtable, here it is. Yeah, so the Airtable here, and to add a node module, it needs to be in NPM. You would just click on the plus here, enter the name of the node module, and optionally the version that you want to use. You can leave that blank, and I think it'll use just like the latest version if you leave it blank. And then you would click save down here, and that will enable your Twilio function to use that module, which is what we're going to need. And then we can go back over here and continue editing. Demo assistant, here we go. All right, so in here, to use the API key, we're going to go, not context, like this. I was going to say environment. It's not environment. Context dot Airtable API key. And that is going to give us the API key that we need. And this is the base ID, which we got from just copying and pasting using the API documentation. It brings over the actual base ID. And we've got everything that we need right now. Now we just need to create a JSON object or a JavaScript object to hold the values that we're going to store in the table. And the way that we would do that is we would just go let values equal, you can name this whatever, but we're going to say what values did we have here? So we need rating, would recommend, and date. So we'll go back over here and say rating, let's say 7, would, and we'll say, and date, we'll say date, date, now, is that right? I think that's right, but yeah, we'll see in a minute. Okay, actually for the ratings, we already got this stuff. So we'll use rating scale from up here rather than hard coding it to test. We can just use the actual values that are coming over. And this would recommend, we'll use that for would recommend down here. I think I spelled that wrong, but anyway. So now the values we're going to use for the values here. So basically, we're just passing this object here that we're creating into this create function. And as long as these properties match up to the column names, we should be able to see the values that we're capturing get pushed into that Airtable table. So right now, looks good. We'll save one more time just to make sure. It's now deploying. Once it's fully deployed, there we go. Now we can go test and see if it's all working. So we'll go over here and just start from the beginning.
Hello. You can ask me for our operating hours or you can rate our service. Which would you like to do?
Right.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate our service?
Say 9.
Would you recommend us to a friend?
Yes.
You rated us a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10 and said yes when asked if you would recommend us to a friend.
Now, if all went well, we can go to Airtable, and there we go. We can see our record in there. So everything worked as it was supposed to. So we are all set. We're gonna stop there for this tutorial, and we'll pick up the rest of the stuff. Is kind of more that I'm gonna go into is kind of more autopilot specific, not necessarily specific to Alexa. So I might just start another series that kind of dives into autopilot topics more generally. But if you've got any questions, you can leave those in the comments and I'll respond just as quickly as I can. Hopefully you found this video valuable. If you did, please like it and visit youtube.com/Dabble Lab, where you'll find more than 110 other Alexa development tutorials and digital assistant related tutorials, more on autopilot and Google Assistant and Microsoft Cortana. Thanks so much.